On today's episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, my film review is The Devil in a Blue Dress, followed by a special segment, Jury Duty. And it all starts right now. This is Jordan Ramirez, and you are listening to Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, and now here is my latest film review. My film review for this episode is Devil in a Blue Dress, released in 1995, directed by Carl Franklin, starring Denzel Washington, Tom Sizemore, Jennifer Beals, and Don Cheadle. Here is the synopsis of the film. Ezekiel Easy Rollins, played by Denzel Washington, is a veteran returning home from the war, finding that America is still segregated during the post-World War II era in Los Angeles. After Rollins was fired from his recent job, he is left with few options for steady income to pay his bills and to keep his house. At Joppy's bar, he meets a mysterious man named DeWitt Albright, played by Tom Sizemore, whom he claims that he was hired by Todd Carter, played by Terry Kinney, to investigate the disappearance of a woman named Daphne Monet, played by Jennifer Beals. Albright assumes that Daphne was hiding at a jazz nightclub that is important to Todd Carter. As Rollins takes the job, he suddenly finds himself involved in a mixed-up situation with the other mayoral candidate, Matthew Terrell, an amazing detective story from the black perspective that is an homage to classic hard-boiled mysteries and film noirs of the 1920s and 1940s. As Albright says in the film, when you're mixed up in something, you better be mixed up to the top. What do I think of this film? The film is amazing to watch from the black perspective, since there were very few films made in Hollywood that featured a black detective that paid homage to Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, or Mickey Spillane. Easy Rollins, as he is shown in the film, is the black version of Philip Marlowe by Raymond Chandler, who has appeared in a series of books. The performance of Denzel Washington as the main detective in the story is amazing to watch. He plays the character with raw emotion and depth to show that he is not just a one-dimensional character. One of the best scenes in the film is when he is meeting with DeWitt Albright at the pier to share some information with him about Daphne Monet. While he is waiting, he starts to have a chat with the young woman. Once her boyfriends arrive and are about to beat up Easy Rollins, Albright shows up and starts to rough them up a bit and is intimidating. It is against Rollins' nature for him to be this violent towards someone when he is in the middle of a confrontation. He is seen as someone who is more calm and relaxed, but as the story progresses and he learns the truth about his job assignment, his character also changes throughout the story. One example of this character transition is when he meets with Joppy at his bar and brings with him a hammer to destroy his marble cover to get some answers about DeWitt Albright and who shot Coretta, Daphne's best friend. One of the best known literary and film devices that feels like an homage to the works of Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, Mickey Spillane, or any of those famous writers of hard-boiled mystery stories is a narration from the first-person perspective. Rollins' narration in the film from beginning to end is an homage to those writers. But while his story is in the mold of those famous characters that are well known in detective fiction, it is a subverted take on that same detective stories from the black experience that makes it equally different. Rollins talks in the film about how he came home from the war and he went from Texas to California with only $300 in his pocket and the GI Bill that was signed into law. He was hoping to make it as part of the American dream, since he needed the money to pay the mortgage for his house and to get food and to pay for his living facilities. Tom Sizemore's performance as DeWitt Albright in the film, even though he is portrayed as being hired by Todd Carter, the mayoral candidate who dropped out, his character in the film is violent and untrustworthy when it comes to giving Easy the job assignment, but also shows threats and intimidation to Easy Rollins. One example is the scene when he and his goons are breaking into his house to eat a sandwich, and he starts to question whether Easy is a liar since Daphne Monet was not at the hotel in the address that Easy sent to him, and starts to put a gun to his head and starts to threaten to kill him to get the right information. He also treats Easy around around like a servant telling him to get him some whiskey that Easy keeps in his refrigerator. The film's cinematography by Tak Fujimoto is amazing to watch, as well as watching the camera glide and move, and also with those unique camera angles. But in keeping with the tradition of film noir during this period, the film also avoids using visual cliches by filming in color that utilizes muted color palettes that are dull to look at. The one exception, however, is the color of Daphne Monet's dress, which is blue, and is a primary color that stands out in a visual sense to give the audience's attention. Fujimoto's lighting also plays with shadow and light to increase tension and anxiety about certain locations in the film regarding the character of Easy Rawlins. Don Cheadle's performance as Mouse, Easy's best friend from Houston, Texas, is single-handedly one of the best scene stealers from this film since he was first introduced to take the gun out of his pocket in the back of Frank Green's head. And all throughout the film, he becomes an animated character with an unorthodox method of how to get Frank Green to talk about where Daphne Monet is located at. When Mouse is trying to get answers for his best friend Easy Rawlins, he often resorts to violence, and he is basically the alter ego of what Easy Rawlins would have become, but he chose not to. Carl Franklin's direction and adaptation of the book is great to watch, but while the film resorts to using some of the same ideas from other hard-boiled mysteries and film noirs of that period, it is at the very least subversive and focuses on the topic of race. Race is in fact the motivating factor of this film that is thoroughly explored and discussed when it comes to trying to fit into a place that each of the characters want to belong in. It is the topic of race that gets Easy Rawlins fired, the power dynamic between Easy and Albright about their status when Easy gets the job assignment, and for when Easy is to meet Daphne Monet at the hotel where she is staying at, since Easy has to get to the back of the hotel since he could not use the front, and this was during the era of segregation. The film is an adaptation of Walter Mosley's novel of the same name in the Easy Rawlins book series. The book was first published in 1990. At the time that the book was published, Universal Studios owned the rights to the book. Jonathan Demme, who was working at TriStar Pictures at the time, managed to get the rights to the book from Universal to Sony, and it paid off. The director who was tasked with the project was Carl Franklin. Franklin at the time scored a major hit with the independent feature One False Move. The film became a sleeper hit and earned critical praise. Originally released direct-to-video, it was later shown at various film festivals and later in theaters. Franklin was told by different people that he should not do a movie with a black lead since the film One False Move was done with no money. Carl Franklin explained in an interview with Slate.com about what interested him about the 1940s decade about black American life for this film. That was the generation that was right before I was born, actually. I was born in 1949. That era was something that was alive in my household. These were people who were directly from the South, who were transplanted from Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana. There was a lot of freedom in it, and there were still those real strong values. Everybody looked out for you. You didn't worry about anyone harming you or anything in your community there. You'd hear all of that barrel house music. That whole Southern culture was something that was kind of a nostalgic thing for me. And I've been a fan of those noir movies, man. I mean, I loved those. Anything with Humphrey Bogart, I was going to watch it. I had read some Dashiell Hammett's, a Raymond Chandler, and I was kind of drawn to that kind of compromised world that film noir deals with. But Franklin kept pushing forward with his dream to make a movie with a black lead. Once Demme made a deal with Sony to get the film rights of Devil in a Blue Dress to Carl Franklin, other people were interested in being in the film as well, including Denzel Washington and Wesley Snipes. Franklin met Denzel Washington during the filming of the film Philadelphia in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he felt that he would fit the part. When Denzel was given the role of Ezekiel Rawlins, he managed to do research for his character at the 5th Ward in Houston, Texas, and managed to interact with the residents and to imitate the accuracy of the speech patterns. He also wanted to wear his wardrobe ahead of time to get used to it before filming began as part of the character's personality. Denzel Washington managed to get along with other actors on the set and was able to bring his A-game to the film. Carl Franklin said that Washington was pretty down-to-earth on that film. Don Cheadle, who was cast in the role of Mouse, was previously cast in Carl Franklin's thesis film when he was at the AFI. The problem was that there was an age difference between Denzel Washington and Don Cheadle, Carl Franklin. Denzel had just come back he had this kind of tradition where he and his family would get a yacht with another family, and they would cruise the Mediterranean for summer vacations, with the children and everything. And so he'd come back from vacation, and he had put on some weight. He had a big beard. I just thought, God, the age difference. I just don't know about that because they're supposed to be contemporaries. And Denzel kept saying, dude, I'm going to be young. Tell him I'm going to be young. And when it was time to shoot, he was young. We brought Don up a little bit in age, so we just knocked it out. He was just so good. After filming was completed and post-production was complete, including having Elmer Bernstein compose the score for the film was released on September 29, 1995. While the film was a critical hit and met with positive praise, the film, however, was not a financial success. Carl Franklin explains the situation of what went wrong and why the film was not a hit. Couple things. Number 1, the genre. The gumshoe genre is a tough genre. 2, the O.J. Simpson case was, we opened on Friday. They announced on Friday that they were going to come with a verdict. And here we had this black guy looking for a white woman, and that, I think, was in the trailer. So there was that. And there was not a lot of interest on the part of the studio to promote the movie, because the executives who had greenlit the film were no longer there. While Sony not only bought the rights to Devil in a Blue Dress, they also optioned the rights to 2 other books as well in the hopes of creating a film franchise centered on Ezekiel Rollins. The idea was folded after Devil in a Blue Dress failed at the box office. Even though the film was not a box office hit, it would later be rediscovered by future audiences on home video and later on television. Most recently, the film is now part of the Criterion Collection, and there has also been speculation that there was going to be a television series centered around Easy Rollins. But so far, nothing has happened. The film is an action-packed detective story with a strong character lead played by Denzel Washington, who embodies the character of Easy Rollins, but also faces hurdles as a black man in 1940s Los Angeles when dealing with prejudice and disillusionment. Accompanying him are the supporting performances by Don Cheadle, Jennifer Beals as the mysterious Daphne Monet, and Tom Sizemore. Each of their performances is unique to their character traits that gives the film its strong points. Combine that with a musical score by Elmer Bernstein, whose music evokes the classic detective stories of that period, but also brings some originality to the music score. The cinematography by Tak Fujimoto, shot in Technicolor and with some amazing gliding and smooth camera angles and shots, as well as some excellent lighting choices to evoke the thematic content and context of the story. It is both an homage and subverted take on the classic film noir detective story told from the black perspective that both excites and makes us feel for the characters in the story itself. It is a film that I hope you will enjoy, and to learn about what life during that period was like and how it is reflective in our own current lifetime and how the film is relevant in today's culture. It is a film that should not be thought of as a look in the past, but a reflection of the present and future as well. We will be right back with my special segment, Jury Duty. I want to take this time to share something with my listeners. During the time that my show was on hiatus last week, I was filling in for my employer, who was selected as one of the grand jurors of the Gasparilla International Film Festival. And even though I was not able to attend the festival from Thursday through Saturday, I did spend a majority of that week watching and reviewing movies to reach the deadline by Sunday evening. So I thought that I would do a special segment called Jury Duty. Last week, I had to fill in for my employer, who was selected as the member of the grand jury for the Gasparilla International Film Festival. I wasn't able to attend to see the other films that were being screened at this year's festival from Thursday through Saturday. This year's Gasparilla International Film Festival was held at both the University of Tampa and AMC West Shore Theaters. The film that opened the Gasparilla International Film Festival was Miranda's Victim, that was screened at the Tampa Theater on Thursday night. The film that closed the festival, which I did attend and talk a little bit about later, was Blackberry. I had a blast watching all the short films for the narrative shorts category being chosen for this year's festival. They were each divided into 4 categories of this year's festival: Dramatics 1 and 2, The Dark Side of Comedy, and Thrills and Chills. Each of the short films from their respective categories impressed me, or maybe it needed to be fine-tuned. I will list my top 3 favorite short films that I enjoyed watching as a juror for this year's festival. The first one that I liked from the Thrills and Chills category is Leaving Yellowstone. In Leaving Yellowstone, you have a romantic couple, Tessa and Mark, having a fun time out at the Yellowstone National Park during the winter season. The trip takes a turn for the worst when Tessa starts to learn the horrible truth about her boyfriend Mark and his time at his uncle's cabin in Yellowstone National Park with his victims. The positive points that I would give for this film are its direction and writing from Kyle Arend, who has done a great job with building tension and fear and the theme of isolation that is shown throughout the film, even if it is short. The performances in the film by Angela Wong Carbone as Tessa and Sean Richard as Mark feel believable and not overdone. The cinematography by Lee Shi-yu and the wildlife cinematography by Jeff Hogan and Andrew Weller were magnificent to watch on the widescreen format with enough screen space. I am a fan of using color palettes to identify the theme or motif that occurs in the films, whether it is through the wardrobe or with the right lighting/prop choices. The color schemes that are focused in the film are reds, yellows, browns, blacks, and whites for thematic or contextual purposes. The production/costume design by Maria Fiorison, I don't know if I pronounced it right, is excellent regarding the space and framing from inside the cabin and the choice of costumes for both Tessa and Mark's characters. Tessa's color choices for her wardrobe in the film is marked by the use of blues, like light blue or dark blues, while Mark's is identified with reds and browns, signifying the opposing tension between each other as the film progresses, along with the score by Gavin Brivik and Alex Williams that is enjoyable to listen to. The film was executive produced by Spike Lee, whom I did not know he was involved with in the production, but it was amazing to see his name in the credits of the film. The second that I like from the dark side of comedy category is Gunpoint. Gunpoint is an absurdist short about Manny, played by Romy Malvia, a homeowner who one day is held at a gunpoint, literally, by one individual who demands that he wants 12 cents from him. Then the next gunman arrives and tells Manny that he wants $1 from him while he also is at gunpoint, and the third gunman wants $1.25 from Manny. While the short is absurdist in nature, it also feels like a political statement about where we are as a nation in terms of gun violence and the absurdity that it is brought forth in this short. Bill Marsili's writing and direction just made me laugh and also made me think about the idea that while it is absurd, it also makes me think about what would happen in a situation like this involving being held at gunpoint and its relation to gun violence in this country that is no laughing matter at all. The performance by Romy Malvia as Manny, the main protagonist of the short film, is priceless, since he is the only person in this short film who is sane and doesn't fall for the absurdity. The other performances, ranging from the director Bill Marsili, Todd Carner, and Derek DeVault, are amazing to watch since their characters in the film would give absurd and bizarre reasons why they held Manny at gunpoint. Benjamin Goskell's cinematography in the film by using the ARRI cameras with anamorphic lenses makes the short film feel cinematic even though it is a comedy short given the seriousness of the way it is photographed on the screen. The final short that I like from the category Dramatic 1 is My Dear Aunt Sally. It tells the story about Luke, played by Brody Stowers, who is introverted and is never able to loosen up and become more extroverted in his social skills. When Aunt Sally, played by Chelsea Lane, comes over to help Luke overcome his social anxiety by having fun with him to loosen up, Luke suddenly feels comfortable being with his Aunt Sally. Luke and Aunt Sally start to have fun together, going out to make new memories. I like this short because it felt so relatable about spending time with someone close to you in the family and to make memories that will last. But it is also from the child's perspective that attracted me to this film. The performances by Brody Stowers and Chelsea Lane were amazing to watch since they felt natural and believable in this film. Some of the short's strengths include the direction by Tom Procida, the script by Heather Kennedy, the cinematography by Brandon Torres for its depth and wonderful shots and angles on the technical side of the film, and the music by George Koliev and Dmitry Danilov. The winner of the Grand Jury Award for Narrative Short went to My Dear Aunt Sally, although I will admit that I think the short that should have won, and I regret not being able to convince one of my co-jurors to persuade this film to get the award, was Leaving Yellowstone, since the short felt more cinematic and much more interesting to watch overall. As I was at the Tampa Theater after the awards were announced for each of the competitors in their respective categories, I got to watch the final film of the Gasparilla Film Festival, Blackberry, a docudrama about the first smartphone before being crushed by Silicon Valley. The film analyzes the rise and fall of the BlackBerry phone and the company that dominated and changed the phone business industry in the last half of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century. It is a film about greed, competition, friendship, and innovation that is explored from beginning to end as the film progresses. The film stars Jay Baruchel, Glenn Howerton, Matt Johnson, also the director and screenwriter of the film, Cary Elwes, Michael Ironside, etc. I actually enjoyed the film since it ended the festival, but also it's funny, informative, and one of the few films to cover on the BlackBerry phone from Canada that has never been used as the main subject for a feature film in the United States. I had a lot of fun and hoping to make it for next year's Gasparilla International Film Festival as a juror, but we'll see, to see what is in store for the next trove of films and shorts, not just from the state of Florida, but also from out of the state and internationally, of course. You have just been listening to my segment, Jury Duty. On the next episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, it's a Jordan Ramirez mini-so. Jordan Ramirez recommends Night Games from 1966, directed by Mai Zetterling, airing this Monday at 12 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. You have been listening to Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. This series is now available to listen to at 4 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public every Friday. And my mini-sodes Jordan Ramirez recommends every Monday at 12 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. And just as a reminder to make sure to like and subscribe to my podcast on Spotify. Make sure to go to my blog website at filmtalkwithjordanramirezpodcast.wordpress.com with my latest podcast episode on the page labeled Episodes. You can contact me on my social media feeds such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I am also available on Letterboxd. Check out my YouTube channel as well, Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, and please make sure to like and subscribe. If there is a film that you recommend that I would put for my next review, make sure to submit it to my social media accounts. And until then, I'll see you at the movies.